All right, so going back into how we're going to create an action into Photoshop, we went through and we went up to Windows, Actions, and we've got that layer showing up over here to the side. I'm going to remake this one, so I'll just delete that. So I've got it off to the side here. Now I'm going to just take you through one more step on how to create an action. So I'm going to hit Create. Polygon. And for my function key, I like to just go with F2. I've got everything else set up so I can go ahead and hit record. Hit OK. Now I can't do my actual selection as part of the recording, so I'm just going to hit stop. So I'm not recording anymore. And now what I'm going to do is just click on my copy, and I'm going to use the polygon lasso tool, and I'm just going to select an area to make a triangle. So maybe something like this right here. Okay. Now I can go through and restart my recording now that I've had my area selected, because I don't want to just select that individual spot. So I've got everything selected. I've got this image selected over here. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit record, and I have to follow through these steps exactly. So I'm hitting record. I make sure I've got my background layer selected. I can hit Control J on my keyboard. There we go. So now I have a new layer created, which is what the triangle is going to be placed upon. Then I'm going to select the contents of my new layer. So I'm just going to go over here and hit Control, click on the layer thumbnail. So I've now got that area selected. And then I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to hit Filter, Blur, and Average. So up at the top, Filter, going over to Blur, and then I'm going to hit Average. Now I want to deselect that layer. So on my keyboard, I'm going to hit Control D. And then at this time, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. So I'm going to go back over here and hit stop. Now these steps will be repeated every time you press F2 function key that you've assigned it to. So now you can delete all the other areas except for your background or layers. And then we start making the triangles. And for this, I usually like to do a little bit more detail around the facial features. And then as I move away from the facial features, then I'll start making a little bit bigger of triangles. So to give you a little example here, I'm going to make sure I'm on my image layer, and I'm going to just draw out a triangle. Maybe I'll go a little bit bigger on this one. And I want to make sure that they're all overlapping. There we go. Now, if everything works correct, when I hit F2, you'll see that it kind of chose the average color of what it's finding in on the inside. And all I had to do was hit F2 on my keyboard, and it automatically does all those steps for me. So I can move this aside here and just make sure that you're clicking back in on the original copy. And I'm going to do it one more time just with some different colors selected. So I'm going to go maybe more into this eyebrow area and bring the line back over, hitting F2 on my keyboard. And again, it's just picking and choosing through the colors available to create that triangular shape based on the colors that it's finding inside. And again, it's just doing all these steps here for you. So I'm going to go ahead, make sure I close my circuit here, hit F2. Oops, I'm on my wrong layer. Let me go back on down. This is going to create a ton of layers for you, as each triangle has its own layer. Later on, it would be nice to go ahead and group these together, but this is really the most time-consuming part. So some general things to remember: stick to triangles as it always looks better with an abstract design. Match up each side and corners unless it's absolutely necessary. Try and keep selections to an area of similar colors. So you don't want to go too big with your triangle. That's going to grab a whole bunch of different colors. So like this area right here looks pretty nice. I mean, it makes sense together. And again, I'm going to try to make this into a triangle, and I might even overlap. Let's see what happens if I overlap it a bit. Okay, again, got to make sure that I go back to my original layer and hit F2. There it goes. So there is one that's kind of hidden behind it. The more triangles and the more detailed it becomes, the better it looks. This is not necessary, as the limited number of triangles can achieve a good minimalistic look, but we want enough that we still retain a lot of the details of the image. Personally, I like to give facial features such as the eyes a little bit more polygons, so it has more detail and it appears clearer in the areas that don't have much going on. Maybe you'll get some less of the polygons. After all, the point of a low poly is that some details can be left out. Of course, it's a creative exercise, and if you think something looks better, feel free to switch that up a little bit. Make sure you zoom into small areas. I like to start at the edges and work in, but you can do whatever feels easiest to you. Using the polygon lasso tool, make sure that the anti-aliasing is turned off. So I'm just gonna kind of show up here. I'm still on the polygon lasso tool. The anti-alias, this is right here. You want to make sure that that is shut off before you go in and make your triangles. So again, I'll just add another one in here. Trying to keep my lines all matching up as best as possible. Make sure that I'm on my image layer and hit F2. So make sure that that is turned off. And then go through and you are going to low poly the whole design. You don't really have to worry too much of what happens into the background. That doesn't have to be low polyed unless you decide to do that on the day two. Make sure that you know you can group. So once you get through eyebrow or you get through the eye, you might want to go through and group those layers together just to make it easier to kind of figure out what's what in the end. And then at the very end, you're going to look for mistakes. In particular, is there any empty spaces that you forgot to fill in, or edges of the triangle that don't exactly meet up? So to do that, all I'd have to do is go down here and shut off the background image. And you can see I didn't quite get my lines to meet up. So I could go through and maybe select this one right here and move it up or over just to kind of help fill that in. Again, I'm working really zoomed in here, but by clicking on the individual triangles, you should be able to get a good idea of what's what and where things need to move. And you're just making sure that you've got everything kind of lined back up as best as you can. I'll turn on my background images again, just so you can kind of see. And now at the very end, when you're all done with it, you can choose to either remove the original image, delete and hide layers, or isolate the low poly just to its own design, group it all together, save it as a JPEG, put it on a different background, or even delete the original photo and replace with a different background, leaving the original image as is, and going ahead and just using that normal image and having the low poly over the top of it. There's a lot of different ways that you can go through this, but again, big key thing, make sure you're using the polygon tool and you're filling the space with lots of different triangles, paying attention to where you want to have the most detail. And I'm just going to shut off my grid. So if I go up here, just so you can kind of see how that's starting to look. And that is it for the low poly. Hopefully you have some fun going in and designing it. If you got any questions, please call me on over.